Good evening. You're watching NewsHour Agenda. I'm Madhav. A big shot in the arm for India's fight against COVID-19. The government has announced that it has given emergency use approval to 2 new COVID-19 vaccines and an antiviral drug, that's Molnupiravir. One of the 2 new vaccines is Corbevax, which is India's first indigenously developed RBD protein subunit vaccine against COVID-19. It will be produced by Hyderabad-based firm Biological E. Another vaccine is Covovax, which has been found to be 90% effective against the original strain. This particular vaccine will be prepared by Pune-based Serum Institute of India. With the addition of these 2 vaccines, India now has several such vaccines in its kitty that have been granted emergency use approval. Apart from the 2 vaccines, an antiviral drug, Molnupiravir, has also been given emergency use authorization. The drug, initially developed to treat influenza, has been repurposed to treat COVID. It works by introducing errors into the virus's genetic code and hence preventing viral replication. But the question on everyone's mind is, how effective will these new vaccines and the new antiviral drug be when it comes to the new variant, Omicron?
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
All right, let's take this across to our guest. Joining us, Dr. Soumitra Rawat is a member of the National Task Force for COVID-19. Rajiv Dasgupta is also another member of the National Task Force. Professor Govardhan Das is a professor of molecular medicine of JNU. Dr. Sanjeev Sashidharan is a consultant and head of critical care at S.L. Raheja Hospital in Mahim, Mumbai. Let's go across, in fact, to Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta first and foremost. And let me begin by asking you, sir, explain to our viewers, what do these vaccines really mean? How different are they from the viral vectors or the inactivated viruses that we've had in the past? How does a protein subunit vaccine or the nanoparticle-based vaccine differ medically, and will it be more effective when it comes to Omicron?
Thank you. As far as Corbevax is concerned, it uses a specific part, the spike protein, to set off the immune process. And since the spike protein is without the virus, the body uses the antibody generated to fight the real virus when it attempts to infect the system. That essentially is how the Corbevax works. Now, this is a vaccine that requires 2 doses at the interval of 28 days. So there will be a day 0 vaccine followed by a day 28 vaccine. Also, it doesn't have very demanding storage requirements. It can be stored, it will require to be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. And similarly, the Covovax, it's shown 90.4% efficacy in a clinical trial, quite a fairly large clinical trial of nearly 27,000 people in South Africa. And therefore, these 2 vaccines are very valuable additions as we go on to expanding the vaccination program, and particularly because the schedule is of 4 weeks duration. This will enable us to vaccinate populations quite fast.
Right, that's a very, very important point that you've made. In fact, Professor Govardhan Das, do you see that happening, that with an enhanced number of vaccines that are there in our kitty, now this will actually allow us for the vaccine penetration to increase much more, coverage to increase much more, particularly given that we're also looking at a huge percentage of our population that is even yet to receive the first dose?
So, good evening, everybody. Actually, what I agree that more number of vaccines, more choices will allow to cover more number of population. That's very true. And coming to the question, your point that this is all the vaccines made based on the original, the mother strain, or parent strain of COVID. So basically, the immune response we are going to generate is essentially the same. If the Omicron is not being recognized by the previously immunized vaccines, these are all the same. But one thing I would like to mention here, I think, in my opinion, being an immunologist, Omicron could be the boon in disguise, and basically probably is the best vaccine. Probably even though any industries could not make it, but the nature made the vaccine itself. If you look at the countries, the 89 countries so far Omicron is spread out, but the death only in 3 countries, Israel, in US, there are one each in these 2 countries. They're the senior citizens and having comorbidity.
Okay.
There are 12 more deaths in UK, but their median age is I think the 48 and more, or maybe 43 or 48. I forgot. So basically, what I'm trying to say, although the Omicron is spreading 5 to 7 times faster than the Delta version, but there's no hospitalization. There's not much of too much of sickness, but certainly this is you are going to making an immune response. Probably it is probably the best vaccine that nature made. So all I'm trying to say
that's bound to raise some questions. That's bound to raise some questions, and I want to bring in Dr. Soumitra Rawat on that. Dr. Soumitra Rawat, is it because of the variant itself being not so effective that we are seeing this kind of a situation when it comes to hospitalizations and serious cases, or is it, as we have seen in the case of Europe and several other countries, where vaccination percentages have been quite high, including those who've been fully vaccinated? Is it because of the vaccine that this virus has not been able to actually cause as much damage as we've seen in previous waves? And you agree with this position being taken by Dr. Govardhan Das, Professor Govardhan Das, that the vaccine is nature's own cure? Because I believe that would cause some amount of controversy or concern.
I think, as you have seen in UK as well, that out of 1,000 patients, only 6 are getting admitted in the hospital. So I think it's a pretty good thing. That's what we keep on telling everyone in our country, that, don't have a hesitancy towards the vaccine. If you haven't taken the second dose, I think you must go and take up the second dose. Even if you get infection, is going to be very mild, and the chances of getting into ICU is very, very less. So that is why the vaccine work, and it's great that we have got 2 more vaccines. At the moment, we are producing something like 31 crore vaccine in a month. With the 2 other vaccines joining in, I think in 2 months' time, we will be producing something around 50 crore vaccines in a month. So I think we will be able to cover each and every one. And with the healthcare and the people of 60 years old with comorbidity, that will require roughly about 6 crores of vaccine. And 6 to 7 crore of vaccine would be required to cover age bracket of 15 to 18. So I think it has come absolutely at a right time.
Right. Sir, but the question that I was actually posing to you was for Professor Govardhan Das, the position that he had taken. Let me take that question across to Dr. Sanjeev Shashidharan. Dr. Sanjeev Shashidharan, if you take a position that this vaccine itself is perhaps nature's best cure, the point is you could possibly be leading to people becoming more careless, not keeping up COVID protocols, and ensuring for a faster spread of Omicron. And that's something that we certainly do not want. In that light, as a doctor, do you agree with the views expressed by Professor Govardhan Das?
So let's not be too premature in deciding what Omicron does. Madhav, we must remember that the age group that has largely been affected Omicron is around the age of 40, 41, 42, 43. What happens when Omicron actually looks into elderly people, immunocompromised, and those with comorbidities is not very clear. So we shouldn't jump the gun and say that it is a mild illness. There is a possibility that it will probably lead to hospitalization. There is a clear possibility that it will overwhelm the entire hospital systems. It's very clear from the London School of Tropical Medicine, from mathematical modeling, that they might see 60% of cases that will probably get into the unit, and they're preparing for that. And now you must remember, when 60% of the hospital is going to be full of COVID, I'm shut up with the view that what happens to cardiac, heart, and the other cancer patients and stuff like that. I mean, will lead to a pandemic of non-COVID illnesses when they will probably not get beds. So I'm certain that we are jumping the gun, and we shouldn't really be lackadaisical at this. Immunity, natural immunity is very good, no doubt about it, but vaccine immunity is probably going to be the key to prevent us overwhelming the health system completely.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta on that. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, while certainly there are those, and the rising number of cases in Delhi and Bombay are there for all of us to see. But one important aspect that we're also looking at is our boosters and the mixing of boosters, which is currently being debated at the highest levels of government and policy making. And I'm sure you're very close to all of those discussions as well. Now, with these 2 additional vaccines coming in, the question that then comes in is, do we have another option of a third shot or a third jab being taken, which could perhaps be from this new kitty of vaccines that could perhaps act as a booster?
Yes, we have so far had an announcement from the Prime Minister with certain very specific situations where the vaccine for the elderly was mentioned. That has been followed by some more operational details coming from the ministry that as far as the comorbidity goes, it wouldn't necessarily require a certification from their medical practitioner. There has been also another operational detail that vaccine recipients would receive an SMS on their registered number 9 months after the completion of the primary schedule, and therefore these operational details more operational details are going to come forth. Now, as far as a mix and match or heterologous vaccine regimen is concerned for the booster, those are decisions we are expecting in January. The NTAGI is certainly going to review data both from within the country, which has been stressed all along, plus the global experience, and therefore we expect more on this to come. But yes, using heterologous vaccine for a booster, which is a mix and match in common parlance, is certainly a very important possibility. Not immediately till that decision comes, but given the fact that we have a fairly large number and variety of vaccines available today, that could certainly be a reality, and that could ease things a lot.
Could ease things a lot. Do you share that view, Professor Govardhan Das? Because with these 2 new vaccines coming in, perhaps the need, as many have placed at least, and the government has now announced as far as the booster dose is concerned, a lot of decisions as to how this will be implemented, and also, of course, doses for those who are in the 15 to 18 age group. With these 2 new vaccines coming in, are we looking at an ease, at least as far as the additional requirement of vaccines would be, particularly for the booster doses concerned?
See, once again, I would like to mention, this is all what I said is that Omicron could be one of the best vaccine, but that doesn't mean I'm saying recommending that you go and one can go out and expose themselves. But coming back to the your question, this is yes. I mean, more number of vaccine, more number of choice. Probably it can cover more number of people, and also by what the immunological term, what I would like to say here, the probably mix match for booster, it may work. And that's because our target protein or target is often we target the spike protein and antibody or neutralizing antibody against the spike protein. So as long as our target is the same, probably the mix and match should not make much difference, and probably that may work very well. So that's the second point.
All
and
right.
Third point, yeah, okay, go ahead.
No, complete your point. Sorry, complete your point. Complete your
Third point is because of the more number of vaccines, more number of choices, and probably you can cover even the younger population, especially, and also those who have the those have the comorbidity. One thing I would like to, and another thing I would like to mention, Prime Minister very carefully choose the word called preventive dose, not that booster dose. Booster the dose is called the one already got the immune response to get it booster. However, a few days back, there's a paper in Lancet saying that the Covishield wins its immune response in 3 months. So basically, those immune responses are being weaned. They definitely need a preventive dose.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that is a point that is not missed on anyone. That Lancet study certainly has caused a huge amount of concern, and of course demands for the booster thus have been going up. But I want to bring in other panelists on the medical aspect as well, and that is Molnupiravir. Dr. Soumitra Rawat, Molnupiravir is another approval that has come in today, and it is a drug that many believe could help, particularly in the mild cases of COVID-19. How do you look at this actually changing the situation on ground when it comes to treatment of those who have contracted COVID-19?
I think it's a very, very good addition, and treating the mild to moderate disease. And what it does is it inhibits replication of RNA virus. So, you know, if it is started early, so what happens, your viral load goes down and you recover quicker. So I think it is a great addition, and the good thing is there is not going to be a scarcity of this. They have been allowed 13 companies to make this drug. So, you know, that is what happens. Suppose if it is one company or two companies are making it, India is a huge country. So, you know, to have it to the more number of people, I think the amount of drug which is produced, it's important. So when 13 companies are manufacturing it, just in case, if we get a third wave, this is going to be helpful. So we are preparing in all aspects regarding the vaccine and regarding the antiviral drug.
All right, that's a very important point that you made over there. But let me bring in Dr. Shashindran on this. Dr. Shashindran, are you confident that A, we will not have a kind of situation that we saw when Remdesivir was being prescribed across the country and all sorts of shortages? Will that not happen, as the previous panelist said, because it has been given out to 13 countries? And also, I'm just reading out an earlier statement of the FDA where they've said that because Molnupiravir works by introducing genetic errors into the virus, it ought to be prescribed with caution and was not recommended as a preventive and only in certain adults. What really are these particular cases where it would be effective and where one should perhaps exercise caution?
Well, what Merck and company have done is Molnupiravir is a fantastic drug. I think it's a very clever drug that, you know, it inserts very small, tiny errors into the coronavirus genetic code. And as the earlier speaker said, it will prevent it from reproducing. So it's a great drug in the first place. Let's give it to that drug. The pill is definitely, in the latest of the phase 3 trials, it was clear that the pill was able to reduce the risk of hospitalization and death in at-risk unvaccinated adults for certain. This means to say, among those patients who have a low immunity, who have absolutely no immunity or immunocompromised, this drug seems to be great in preventing hospitalization and cause of death to day of 29. However, what the European Medicine Agency, which initially actually authorized this drug, recommended was that patients should begin treatment with the tablet called as Lagevrio within 5 days of the first symptoms for adults who do not need oxygen support or who are at risk of their disease worsening. That means the immunocompromised patients, the elderly with comorbidities, and those patients who do not need oxygen, they are the patients in which we probably need to start Lagevrio or Molnupiravir. That's what the EMA actually says.
All right, so that's interesting. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, you see Molnupiravir being used extensively and rapidly across the country. Now that the approval has come in, how soon before it actually comes out in the market in your estimation, sir?
Well, honestly, I don't know how soon it will be available in the market. But yes, it certainly does cut down on the rate of hospitalization in mild and moderate disease. As my other co-panelists have said, it's a very useful addition in the armamentarium. However, one important caveat is it's certainly not recommended, as far as current knowledge goes, to pregnant women, and that's very important. Now, I repeat, why this is important is also because if you see the COVID data, substantially less number of women as of now have been immunized as compared to men, and these women are largely young women who are either currently pregnant or lactating or planning a pregnancy. So that can remain a potentially relatively more vulnerable subpopulation among our adults. And in that group, you cannot, under current directions, you cannot use the Molnupiravir capsules. Also, the primary course is 40 capsules for the patient, 4 capsules twice a day into 5 days. That's a total regimen of 40. But yes, this is certainly a very useful addition.
All right, let me quickly bring in the other aspects of our own vaccination program. And Professor Govardhan Das, the question that many would also ask is that now with additional vaccines coming in, I mean, we all know what happened as far as Johnson & Johnson's vaccine is concerned. It received the emergency use approval, but when Johnson & Johnson and Moderna will be available is not yet clear at the moment. The question is that with these vaccines coming in, does it necessarily mean that they would come out in the market as of now? We don't know about that. And B, the question that also arises, what happens to the gap between vaccines that many have been demanding should be reduced back to 1 month? We had increased the gap between Covishield, if you all recollect, to about 3 months. At the moment, there are many countries which have reverted back to the 1 month gap.
See, this is once again this jargon of immune responses. Basically, when you mount immune response and then the antibody titer has to come down, and then only you can give the booster dose. So basically, for it entirely depends on the human genetics. So basically, in a population, basically what you do, they immunize in a certain gap. What gap? Probably it depends on the vaccine to vaccine. Which vaccine can mount what kind of immune response? So basically, it depends when you are going to give a booster dose. It entirely depends on the type of vaccines.
Okay, it depends entirely on the type of vaccines. Dr. Rawat, where do you stand on this? Is it time for us to perhaps review the gap between our vaccines now that we have more vaccines in our kitty?
I think if you look at the first time, initially, why did we increase the, time of the vaccine? Because there were quite a few papers which came from UK. They said, if we give a vaccine for, after 3 months, the immune response is better. So that is how it started. So we started on a very scientific basis. Now we need to have a look at the science again and see in a large number of the patient which is the ideal dose. I think in majority of places it's still 2 to 3 months in European countries as well. It depends on what kind of vaccine you are taking. If you are taking Covaxin, is 4 weeks. Otherwise, it's 84 days for Covishield. So we need to look further and see which is better. I think the most important thing is the booster in our country is 9 months. Some of the countries is 6 months. New Zealand has gone even further and they say booster after 4 months. So, we need to look at the science and see what works the best, and it depends on the country to country.
Dr. Shashindran, do you agree with that perception of Dr. Rawat? Is it science or is it availability? That's the bigger question.
So it's actually a mix of both. Actually, if you look at it, it has to be a combination of good biological science, and we have to be very pragmatic when it leads to public health. It is a good mixture of pragmatism, that is practicality, logistical reasoning, as well as biology that needs. And as the earlier panelist said, if the benefits outweigh the risks, then we should probably just adhere to that if it is logistically feasible in our country. And that's how we probably put up the days and the days between vaccines, or the mix and watch, or the heterologous kind of immunity. I think we need to be a lot of pragmatic in public health.
All right. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, where do you stand on this issue of the gap being reduced, sir?
Well, to link back to what the other co-panelists said, yes, the gap was increased because there was evidence that showed that an increased gap certainly promotes better immune response. But part of the story is that as Delta spread or started spreading through UK and Europe, that's when some countries switched back to a shorter schedule. And in fact, if you remember, it was within 24 hours that India announced the longer interval. UK actually switched back to a shorter interval. That did cause some debate and some confusion. But essentially, the larger gap certainly promotes or provides better immunity. That still stands. Now that we have experienced the Delta, we are past the Delta wave, I don't think there's an urgency to roll back the interval in any way, and that's the difference I'm making in the situation in which UK and some other countries took that decision.
Right.
And if a rollback of any kind is necessary, that the NTAGI and the NEGVAC would dwell upon.
But Professor Das, many would say that even the European countries which had a fairly high rate of double vaccination saw the surge in cases in recent months. We've seen what's happened in other countries such as South Africa with the numbers that are rising, and on a daily basis they have been rising. Can we say for sure that we will not see a wave here in India, given the number of cases in Delhi? It's just short of about 500 today.
This is nobody once again can assure that is not hard wave is not going to come, but certainly. As we all India did the vaccination, 141 crore doses of vaccination already have been given. If these vaccines are working, certainly we expect we are protected. And in addition, previous data, if we look at in India, the per million population death is only 348, whereas the per million death in US is 2,416. So in previous cases. So basically, in that respect, if I count taken together, all this fact together, probably I guess, rather in my opinion, we are going to see less of third wave. And if once again, it's my prediction because of these facts, what we see maybe in surge in some pockets, not in a wide wave.
Okay. Dr. Rawat, do you look at it that way? Would we only be looking at surge in certain pockets and not a wave that we'd seen nationally last time around, particularly in our big metros?
I think, Madhav, we need to learn that, even if you had a vaccine, if you don't have a COVID-appropriate protocol, you are going to get infected, whether it's alpha, beta, gamma, delta, or Omicron. It all depends on whether we are putting the mask properly, which is covering nose and mouth, whether we are doing a good hand hygiene as soon as we are touching surface outside your home, and whether you are having a proper social distancing. So these three things are very important. Fourth thing is which is important is vaccine. And the fifth thing is, whenever you have a small amount of numbers, you need to have a micro containment zone where you need to do test, track, isolate, treat, and contain.
Right.
So, and also the genome sequencing is very important, just to make sure the new variant is not coming, whether the new variant is variant of interest or whether it's a variant of concern. There has been a pretty good study that in a journal public, if 80% of people are using the mask, then the chances of having a pandemic is less. And if less than 40% people, population is using the mask, the risk is higher. There has been a very well documented study. So COVID appropriate protocol is very, very, very important.
All right, Dr. Shashidharan, closing remarks from you. Is the fear of a third wave, is it real now? We've seen cases rising in several big metros. Delhi and Bombay in particular, our biggest cities, are seeing a surge in cases over the last several days. In fact, yellow alert in the national capital as well. The night curfew time has been brought forward from 11 o'clock to 10 o'clock. A lot of places there are odd, even particularly in markets and shopping places. Is this the time that we all have to now reduce our going outside the home, bring it back to the levels which we had seen in previous months and exercise extreme caution in terms of interacting with others?
So yes, Madhav, we've seen it in the United States that the Omicron is spreading. It's like the Usain Bolt of all the coronaviruses that we know of as of now. And we know that the third wave is kind of inevitable. However, whether the wave will overwhelm the healthcare facilities, that is the big question. Whether the wave will just go up and come down quickly. That is what we're seeing in many countries. And the other thing is that this wave will go down to a ripple if we were actually going to use COVID-appropriate behavior and vaccinate people with their boosters at pandemic speed.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for the moment. I'd like to thank all our panelists for joining us. Dr. Soumitra Rawat, Rajiv Dasgupta, Professor Govardhan Das, and Dr. Sanjeet Shashidran. Very, very informative and educated discussion today on India's hope as far as vaccines, and of course in the form of the antiviral Molnupiravir drug that is of course going to help in the fight against COVID-19. But meanwhile, we all need to exercise extreme caution, ensure COVID protocols and COVID appropriate behavior is there for each and every citizen if we have to break the chain. Thanks so much for joining us on The First Debate.